Hello. Today we're going to be covering the Vietnam War 1967 to 1968. This is going to be part one of the PowerPoint series. So, we're going to be starting with Con Thien. Con Thien is located 2 miles away from the demilitarized zone. The demilitarized zone, as you can see from this map, is this area with a river going right through it that people are not supposed to obviously have any military in it. However, we know that the North Vietnamese have plenty of artillery and troops in this area. So, to be able to counter that, McNamara has decided to build a line, the McNamara line, that will be right south of the demilitarized zone. And it will then hopefully stop the traffic of North Vietnamese troops and supplies into the south. Con Thien now, along with another place, Gao Len, over to the right, that would be over here, if you can see my mouse over there, are two very important places on the McNamara line because they are what you would call infiltration zones. These are areas that the North tend to use to swoop on into the South, and they want to stop this area. And Con Thien is a hill that really McNamara and Westmoreland, General Westmoreland, have decided cannot fall this one hill, because if it does fall, it exposes other important American military bases and locations, like a place called Dong Ha. So really, that order is given: don't lose Con Thien, but it's 2 miles south of the DMZ zone, and it can be barraged by artillery all the time, the entire time. One of the troops that was stationed there talked about the fact that when he showed up, he looked north towards the DMZ and he saw the North Vietnamese flag waving right there. He could see it. That's how close they were. And so for the troops, the station there is quite difficult. During the daylight hours, you have engineers going out and building the McNamara line, and they are exposed. I mean, they're going out into fields, excuse me, and trying to build this this 60-meter wide zone that they're putting a whole bunch of landmines and sensors in to try to stop the North. But when they're building it, they can be smacked and hit with artillery all day long as they're trying to build. And so to stop this, the Marines are told to move on north in that 2 mile gap area, because they can't go into the DMZ north of the DMZ. And they're supposed to just sweep out the North Vietnamese troops that are there. And it is just a horrible meat grinding battle. Around 79 soldiers are killed. Over 1,000 are wounded of the Marines. It is their worst day up to this point of fighting. And I mean, the fighting was just brutal. When the troops pulled out, about 2 days later, they were able to go back to collect the dead bodies. But after 2 days of sitting in that sweltering heat, and also having North Vietnamese booby trap the bodies, or just do horrendous things to the bodies, the American troops were just disgusted by what they saw. And this is a situation where definitely PTSD can happen for what they experienced there. You have soldiers that were wearing gas masks, not because of gas, but just simply because of the smell that was emanating from the bodies and from what they were seeing there. Um, so you do have later on in the battle, CBS going, and also ABC was there too, but CBS goes and films. And unlike ABC's, what CBS did is they did a special broadcast just on Con Thien on September 11th, 1967, to try to show that these young men are just sitting out in the open to be hit by a shell. And you have interview after interview after interview where troops are discussing about how, they're just praying or that they just know that any moment their time has come and there's nothing they can do about it. And this is a situation where you're not seeing hope, where you're not seeing like we can win this. It's just troops knowing that they are just sent to be in this location. Yeah, to be a body to be hit with a shell. If you want, you can go on to YouTube and watch the whole 27-minute CBS special. It is there if you wish to see that. Also, during the exact same time, we have other border battles. This one is over by the border of Laos and Cambodia. It's Dokdo. And this location is called the Central Highlands. It is 250 miles north of Saigon. And as you can see, close to the borders and close to the Ho Chi Minh trails that are going down through Laos and Cambodia within their chutes going into Vietnam to supply the area. So the Battle of Dak To happens from November 3rd to the 23rd, and it's really just a series of engagements that are going to be happening. So the United States felt that they were losing the Central Highlands, this area full of hills, and they decided that they were going to send in more troops because they have around 1,000 troops in the area, while the communists have about 7,000 troops. So the U.S. goes and adds 3,000 troops more to the area, so they're at least at 4,000, and they then go and have the directive to sweep the area, basically go and find the enemy and take them out of the area. So right outside of Dak To, they set up a fire base, a location, a base for them, and they start sweeping out. And their main target is to control this hill 875. And the battle for this hill happens November 19th to the 22nd, and it is a horribly fought battle for both sides. The the North Vietnamese are going to have horrendous casualties as well. But with the fighting for Hill 875, the Americans are going to lose 285 that are going to be killed, 18 troops are going to be missing, and over 1,000 Americans are going to be wounded. At one point during the battle, when the U.S. support planes are called in, unfortunately, one does strike the American lines, killing 30 Americans in that. And yeah, it is just a tough, tough, tough fought battle, but it's one where they said we needed to stop the flow from the Ho Chi Minh Trail. We need to start going in and pushing out the North Vietnamese and the communist South Vietnamese, the Viet Cong, or else we're going to totally lose this area. So that is what they're told for going in and pursuing this Operation MacArthur. So exactly what I talked about with the high casualties of Hill 875. You have Company A, C, and D that go to take the hill at around 10:30 in the morning outside of Dak To. Company C and D go up the hill while A stays behind, basically to cut out a landing area for helicopters, knowing that they're going to be having to do that. As they advance up the hill, they're halted when the Americans came within 300 meters of the crest of where then the North Vietnamese troops are, and they open fire on them with machine guns, 57 millimeter rifle fire, B-40 rockets, everything just, explodes at one moment. And these troops are well hidden in trenches and in bunkers, so it's very tough for the Americans to go in. At around 2:30 p.m., also, we have the People's Army of Vietnam, the North Vietnamese Army, hidden also at the bottom of the hill. And now they strike at Company A as they're just trying to clean out the helicopter landing areas. So the Americans have no idea that they walked into a total ambush in this area. C and D up the hill are being slaughtered, and now A at the bottom of the hill is also being slaughtered. The men of Company A have no place to go but up the hill, so that they're not going to be cut off from the other companies and be standing alone. And then at 6:58 p.m., the American fighter bomber dropped two 50-point snake eye bombs, accidentally hitting that center of the line Some have gone for that number of 30, but because we have the 18 missing, presumed dead also in the bombing, we have other numbers that are saying 42 killed immediately and injuring 45 others in that bombing. So the following day, 3 companies sent out to relieve the other 3 companies, but it took them all day to simply get to their location up on the hill. And so then the next day, the U.S. bombed the top of the hill heavily. And on the 23rd, the U.S. sent up more troops on the south side, and they took the hill as then the North abandoned it. The troops that had survived all of that fighting up on the hill were without water and other supplies in these harsh conditions. When they were finally rescued by other Americans. So at the end of the entire Dokdo campaign, not just the Hill 875, we have a total then of 376 Americans killed, 1,441 wounded, and 40 helicopters being destroyed because remember that helicopter landing zone came under fire. And then we have 257 B-52 airstrikes that are going on throughout this battle for one hill. And in the end, what do the Americans do after they fully take the hill? They do what they're going to continue to do and what they have done. They left the hill afterwards as they left the area. Yeah, that's what's going on. So setting up for Tet, the Tet Offensive is going to be happening. And this is going to be Giap's major piece of magic. He wants to trick the Americans with his major setup. And one of the biggest tricks that you can do is to make the Americans assume that a major offensive is going to be happening in a different location. And he goes to set that up. He wants to draw troops away from strategic areas like Saigon itself. And so he sets up this city and military base of Khe Sanh as a major distraction for the American government to go for that. Now, General Westmoreland felt that there would be a major attack against Khe Sanh. So if Khe Sanh would fall, this base, then basically the highway would be open for Northern troops to sweep down into the South. And so General Westmoreland does not want to lose Khe Sanh at all. And he also does not want to repeat of what the French experienced with Dien Bien Phu. So he was right with the fact that there was going to be an attack on Khe Sanh, but he did not know that this was just a side attack for the major offensive that was to come with the Tet Offensive. So Khe Sanh was the fighting at Khe Sanh started on January 21st, 1968. The North launched a large artillery bombardment on the base, and they would be under attack for a total of 77 days. It is going to be one of the longest and bloodiest battles of Vietnam, as Khe Sanh is sitting on that major highway to Saigon, as previously mentioned. Lyndon B. Johnson said that he wanted to hold Khe Sanh at all costs. And this is tricky when your president says, hold it at all costs. To kind of maybe make a connection, Stalin said, hold Stalingrad at all costs, and Hitler said, take Stalingrad at all costs. And that was a horrible battle because of that, at all costs motto. So when it was seen that the major offensive was not coming, the United States sent in ground forces to basically stop the siege and the fighting there at Khe Sanh. However, the big thing that while Khe Sanh was happening, the trap is being laid for the Tet Offensive, where 70,000 Viet Cong and North Vietnamese troops move into positions to attack over 100 cities at one time in Vietnam. And Saigon, the capital city, which nobody thought Saigon at this point can be attacked majorly, it's on the list. So luckily there is one commander who realized that Saigon was very ill protected, and he talked Westmoreland to move his troops to Saigon for the Tet holiday, so that the city had some American defenders during the Lunar New Year. Although there's supposed to be a peace, you always have the people that say maybe it's not going to be as peaceful as we assume. And that commander was correct. So, what is a Tet Offensive? Early on January 30th, the North Vietnamese and Viet Cong forces attacked 13 cities just as festivities for the Lunar New Year began. So, this is the Lunar New Year celebration. This is the biggest holiday of the year in Vietnam. And they assumed that this is going to be a peaceful time. And boom, 13 cities under attack right away. And other locations also are under attack. Many U.S. officials and commanders thought that the attacks that were going on were just fireworks because it's New Year's going on until it was, kind of late. And then they realized, oops, there's an attack. The next day, more and more cities would be attacked. So, with Saigon, the North and Viet Cong troops had numerous targets within Saigon. 35 battalions attacked the city itself. The first targets were the presidential palace, the national radio station, and the U.S. embassy. When they took the radio station, they tried to play a pre recorded speech from Ho Chi Minh calling on the South to rise on up. However, one of the employees from the radio station ran out to the tower and kind of cut the lines off to the station and then just set up for himself to play the Beatles. So while the Battle of Saigon was going on, if you turned on the main radio station, you heard the Beatles. Because I guess that's what he had to quickly just pull out and press play to. He also had Vietnamese folk music there in the mix too. So I mean, there was some variety that day. However, the U.S. Embassy is attacked. They're able to, as you see from the photo, blow a hole into the wall, and a squad of Viet Cong attacked the U.S. Embassy for 6 hours. The United States flew in paratroopers via helicopters to land on the roof to help defeat the Viet Cong, as the embassy itself was lightly guarded with just MPs, military police. And it does take a while to be able to defeat them. Now, during all of this fighting, during the Tet Offensive, comes one of the most famous photos of the Vietnam War, and that is the Adams photo. So during the fighting in Saigon, a Viet Cong prisoner who was going around Saigon murdering the families of police officers was brought before a brigadier general. And this is a man who just found out that kind of his right hand man's family was just butchered. They were all just killed, including the girls. And that his godchild was among them. This is his close friend. And now the man is brought in front of him. The man that is most likely responsible for their deaths. And you question him for a short time just to try to figure out where he was and if this is the guy. And what does he do? He takes out a pistol and he shoots the guy right in the head right there. Adams, a photographer, is right there and he snaps the photo just at that one moment where the trigger is pulled, but the man is still standing. General Westmoreland said the photograph in the film shocked the world, an isolated incident of cruelty in a broadly cruel war, but a psychological blow against the South Vietnamese nonetheless, as this is a South Vietnamese general taking justice into his own hands. This man is not a prisoner of war. This man is not facing trial. This man is simply killed in the streets. No trial. So with Saigon, the fighting continued in many parts of Saigon until roughly around February 10th, continuing fighting in and around the outskirts until March 7th. South Vietnamese families were hiding and they were scared of being killed by roaming squads trying to find soldiers and government employees and their families. Some people, this will happen again with the fall of Saigon, but some people like bury family photos and that stuff in their backyard. That might show that they have a son that is, say, fighting for the South Vietnamese government. You have pictures of somebody in their uniform. They hide them just in case one of these roaming bands comes on through. Altogether, around 110,000 North Vietnamese and Viet Cong soldiers are going to be killed with this fighting. So before January 31st was over, 5 out of 6 autonomous cities, 36 of 44 provincial capitals, and 64 of 245 district capitals had been attacked during the Tet Offensive. Khe Sanh, another city, Hue, which we'll be talking about a lot more, and the Saigon Circle saw extended fighting, while the other fighting was just over in a few days. And it all depended where you were, what you saw. My father's friend from school, from Denfeld, was on leave for the Lunar New Year because a lot more soldiers were given leave because this is supposed to be a peacetime. And he went to the city to stay at a hotel, and they never found his body. They never found anything about what happened to him. Obviously, he was an American, and they were able to recognize him quite easily. So he was killed, but they have no idea what happened to him and to his body. So it does depend where you are when the Tet Offensive happened, what could have happened to you. With the next part of this series, we will be talking about the Battle of Hue. So thank you very much for listening. Bye-bye.